Hi, okay, so I'm here to give my speech. I have my notes on the table. We couldn't get the TV to work, so my visual aid's currently actually the extra computer that we brought because the TV couldn't connect. And then I also brought some of my medication. Here's my audience. I got 6 people, and so I'm just going to set my computer up, and hopefully it's in the right area. All right. Did you know that according to the Arthritis Foundation, 300,000 kids each year in the United States are diagnosed with juvenile arthritis? Did you even know kids could get arthritis? Do you know any siblings, children, or friends with juvenile arthritis? Well, now you do. As a 3-year-old, I was diagnosed with juvenile idiopathic arthritis. I've grown up with this disabling disease and have become a role model for others who have also suffered from it. I'm currently a spokesperson for the Arthritis Foundation, and my story has been shared on not only 1, but 2 national websites. Therefore, you can now consider me an arthritis expert. The Arthritis Foundation states that in the United States, more children are diagnosed with juvenile arthritis than diabetes, which is why it's so important to raise awareness for this disease. This speech will provide you with both an education and explanation of juvenile arthritis by providing you with an insight on personal impact of juvenile arthritis on a child, the signs and symptoms, the causes, and common treatment options. It was just another normal morning for my family and I. As always, I woke my mom up yelling "Mama up" time bright and early, as I was just a toddler at this time. My big brother Nate and I were playing, and we didn't have a care in the world. It was just another normal day for us. But then my mom noticed my swollen, hot, and painful finger. This was the day that forever changed my life. At first, my pediatrician said that nothing was wrong with me, but my mom's motherly instinct was right, because eventually I ended up at the only rheumatologist in Minnesota, and I was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. I was taken into a fluorescent-lit, sterile lab, and my arms were bent, extended, and checked. I didn't want to be there, but I had to be, because just like many other children with juvenile arthritis, you have to be there and you have to go through this stuff in order to get treatment and to get your diagnosis. Growing up with peers, teachers, and coaches who question how you look perfectly normal, yet can't participate in gym class every day or maybe can't attend hockey practice, can be a really hard challenge for children, especially young children. It's even more difficult trying to tell them that you can't participate solely because your joints are stiff and sore due to your arthritis, and having them respond with, "Well, arthritis is only for old people." This is why increased education and awareness is so important. Now that you have personal insight on what it's like to be an adolescent with juvenile arthritis, let's work on obtaining a basic understanding of the disease itself. Juvenile arthritis isn't a disease in itself. According to Mayo Clinic, it's actually an umbrella term for many autoimmune and inflammatory diseases that occur in children under the age of 16. Juvenile arthritis is an autoimmune disease. Now you might be asking, what is an autoimmune disease? An autoimmune disease is, the best way to put it is, think of when you get the flu. A normal healthy person's body would fight the flu virus, where when you have an autoimmune disease, your cells attack your body instead of the flu cells because they mistake it. And with arthritis, when this happens, you have a flare-up, which causes an increase in your symptoms and more pain and more missed hockey practices. So it's really not fun to handle, and it can be very hard to control. Now we've gained a basic understanding of juvenile arthritis, let's move into the signs and symptoms of juvenile arthritis. Joint stiffness, pain that gets worse in the morning, tenderness in the joints, limping, fevers, rashes, can all be signs and symptoms. So you may be wondering, how do you differ these signs and symptoms from an everyday child to a child who has JA? How do you tell the difference? Let's start with pain and stiffness. Children may complain of pain in their joints after a long day of playing, which is normal, but a kid with arthritis is going to wake up with pain in the morning, and this may or may not get better as they continue to be more active during the day. Next is swelling. This is a sign of inflammation. This will be different from your swelling that you get after an ankle sprain, where it would swell and then slowly die down. With arthritis, you might be swollen for an hour, and then the next hour you're fine, and then it'll come back. is rashes. Children with arthritis won't get rashes from like allergies, which is normal, or poison ivy, but instead we'll get a pink rash that will go across our knuckles, cheeks, the bridge of the nose, maybe your arms, your torso, and your legs. And there would be no oozing or itching with this rash. Another sign is weight loss. This might be normal for children to be picky when they're growing up about what foods they eat, but a kid with arthritis is not going to eat because they're so fatigued or they just don't have the appetite for it. Lastly, persistent redness, pain, or blurred vision of the eye. This can be a sign related to juvenile arthritis that is eye-related complication known as iritis, or inflammation of the eye, according to arthritis.org. Note that this is different than your average infection that gets passed around from child to child in a school, such as pink eye. As you can see above, many signs and symptoms of juvenile arthritis could easily be mistaken as other childhood diseases or injuries that aren't quite as serious or long-lasting. This is why it's important for parents to get a proper diagnosis and examination if they feel that they're seeing these signs in their children. Now that we're capable of identifying signs and symptoms of juvenile arthritis, let's move into the probable cause of arthritis. When it comes to juvenile arthritis, both researchers and rheumatologists have more questions than answers. Currently, more than a dozen genes out of about 20 to 40,000 in the genetic information of a person or their human genome have been identified as strongly associated with juvenile arthritis, according to the Arthritis Foundation, Kids Get Arthritis Too. The best way to understand this process is to imagine a flower. The stem of the flower is what contains your genes, which is what basically makes you capable of getting sick or a disease. The petals of the flower are the specific autoimmune diseases. So it might be diabetes type 1, it could be lupus, or it could be arthritis. Then you add in environmental factors. Environmental factors for this flower might be a storm or wind, or too much or too little sunlight. But with arthritis, the environmental factors could be stress, they could be too little sleep, it could be specific foods, allergies, and it's really unknown what the exact environmental factors are, but that's according to arthritis.org. Now that we understand the potential cause of juvenile arthritis, let's advance into the treatment goals of juvenile arthritis. There's a wide variety of treatment methods. Dr. Giannini, a rheumatologist on the Arthritis Foundation's website, states that the idea then is to shut off the disease as quickly as possible with as aggressive as treatment as you need to. Approaches may differ from physician to physician, but in the end, the goal is remission, which according to arthritis.org is the permanent or temporary disappearance of the signs and symptoms of the disease, which in this case is arthritis. This speech has given you personal insight on the impact of juvenile arthritis, the ability to notice possible signs and symptoms in a child, possible treatment options and causes, and lastly, remission. The Arthritis Foundation reports that 1 in every 250 children in the United States are diagnosed with arthritis. This is why it's vital that we as a community come together and educate ourselves, because it's likely that one day you'll either meet a child who has yet to be diagnosed with juvenile arthritis, who has already been diagnosed with juvenile arthritis and is in need of your support. Stiff, sore joints in the morning, not wanting to participate in normal activities, pain and tenderness, irritable and fatigued, or maybe just a swollen, hot, and painful finger that the pediatrician insists is normal. Do any of these signs stand out to you? Remember, kids get arthritis too. And then I would like to share my visual aid with you guys. This is my Adderall. This is one of the treatment methods. It's a biologic, which is one of the more higher end, you could consider it, medications. It's a little more expensive. It's harder to get with insurance because they require that you exhaust all options prior to starting this because biologics are so much more expensive. So I'll pass this around. And while this is going around, does anyone have any questions or comments that they'd like to share?
Do you ever grow getting JRA?
Well, as I said, researchers and rheumatologists both have more questions than answers. So it's that, and I've been told by my rheumatologist from his experience that once you turn 18, usually if you haven't gone into a long-term remission, such as I haven't, then you usually are going to have arthritis, but really they don't really know. That's why we need to find more research for this disease.
What are all the treatments for it?
So with arthritis, there's biologics, which is what I just passed around, and that's like the higher tier of it. And then below that would be like methotrexate, which is kind of like low-dose chemo. And I tried that personally, and I did not like it. I got very sick from it, and it just really didn't work out well for me. And then below that would be like anti-inflammatories, which is not often used. Usually it's a little more severe than that. But it really depends. Every physician has their knack, and they honestly, I've seen drugs used that are not, like, we call it off-label use, where it like works for that, but it's not technically labeled for that. So that happens often as well. All right, anything else? Thank you guys for coming today.
Thank you.